Let's talk about the Myles Garrett trade rumors because with the Browns at 1-6, Amari Cooper already gone, and Deshaun Watson out for the rest of the year, it is fair to say that there could be a complete fire sale coming for the Browns, especially if Andrew Berry looks at 2025 as his final year to prove that he is a good enough GM to have this job long term. He may want to stockpile on picks and give himself the best chance to get a good draft class. So, we had a report come in from Albert Breer over at Sports Illustrated on the Monday Morning Quarterback Club saying teams are, quote, fishing for Myles Garrett. Here's the entire quote from Albert. Speaking of trades, the Browns will get phone calls now based on their 1-6 record and the fact that they just offloaded Cooper. I don't think they'll move Myles Garrett, but some fishing has taken place. Anyone can call Denzel Ward or Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. But guys such as Za'Darius Smith or Jack Conklin would have value to others and could be more realistic targets. Let's start with Myles Garrett, and then we'll talk about some of the other players on the Browns that are trade candidates. I am 100% opposed to trading Myles Garrett. There are a lot of reasons why I do not want to see the Browns trade Myles Garrett. There's an emotional reason of this is the best player in Browns franchise history. He's right there with Jim Brown. And trading him away just a few months after he won NFL Defensive Player of the Year and is in the prime of his career, I don't see a move where you can make where the Browns come out of this better without Garrett than with Garrett. So I am 100% opposed to trading Garrett away from an emotional standpoint, but also from a analytical and more numbers-oriented standpoint. I don't see a way where you can get fair enough draft compensation from Garrett in a trade in the middle of the season. The reason being is if the Browns were to trade Myles Garrett right now to, say, the Philadelphia Eagles, I know they're bad pass rush. Let's say the Eagles. And the Eagles give the Browns their 2025 first-round pick and a whole lot more. But let's just start with the 2025 first. We don't know what pick that is going to be. And that is very important when trying to decide whether or not to trade Garrett. If I tell you right now the Browns trade Myles Garrett to the Eagles and Philadelphia goes on to win the Super Bowl, the Browns are going to look like big dumbos for trading Garrett away for the number 32 overall pick. They simply do not know what pick they are going to get in return. And in round one, when we're talking about some of the level of Myles Garrett, you need those answers, which is why the only possibility I see the Browns making a trade for Garrett would possibly be in the offseason. When the Eagles call for Garrett, the Browns know what pick number they are getting. It is not a raffle. It is not some type of lottery where it could be the 32nd pick, it could be the 18th pick. Those are dramatically different picks. I mean, for starters, a lot of scouts have said this year under the table that this upcoming NFL draft class may have the lowest number of first-round graded players in recent history. There's going to be 32 guys that get picked in round one this year because there have to be 32 guys that get picked in round one. That does not mean that all 32 players are viewed as round one talent. And so if you have a draft class where there's not even a whole lot of guys with first-round grades on it, and you trade Myles Garrett to a team that could end up picking 32nd, 31st, or 30th, you are not going to get the impact player you think you are when you hear the Browns got a first-round pick for Garrett. Because whenever we hear first-round pick, just instinctually, we think first-round pick, good. That's because of early first-round picks. Go look at some recent drafts. Go look at guys that got picked from 28 to 32. You would be surprised, even for football savants and big diehard NFL fans, how many players got picked from 28 to 32 that you just haven't really heard of and are not in the league or not on the field at all. So outside of just the emotional standpoint of, yeah, I don't want to see them trade Myles Garrett because he's the best player in franchise history, I don't think it's a wise decision at all to trade him in the middle of the season when an unknown commodity is coming back to you. If you could guarantee me it would be this pick number, okay, then we can start to have a little bit more of a real conversation. Myles Garrett, for the 23rd overall pick, a future first, a second or a third, something like that. Okay, let's talk about it. Myles Garrett for somewhere in round 1 next year? Pass. Not interested. So, with that over, my rant, would you trade Myles Garrett for, say, 2 first-round picks and a little bit more? 2025 first-rounder, 2026 first-rounder. That's about what the Bears had to give up to get Khalil Mack from the Raiders, who was in a similar-ish spot to Garrett is right now in his career when he got traded. A little bit younger, but also coming off an NFL Defensive Player of the Year award. I'm passing, but I do want to know what you have to say about this. Now, let's move on to some other trade candidates for the Browns because I expect them to make more trades. Other players that are just off the table. Nick Chubb. The guy worked his ass off, and he detailed that in his Players Tribune article to come back and play for the Cleveland Browns. You are not trading Nick Chubb. Sorry. Just off the table. JOK, one of your young ascending players, right now looking like a rare draft hit by Andrew Berry. Keeping JOK. Also keeping Denzel Ward. The cornerback position is probably third, fourth most important position in football. Probably goes quarterback, wide receiver is really getting up there. Look where all the wide receivers are going in the draft. And then either corner or edge rusher. Maybe edge rusher, then corner. But yeah, these 4 guys off the table for me. Answer, hang up. Now, players that are right on the fringe that I could be convinced, some more than others. Elijah Moore, David Njoku, Jack Conklin, Wyatt Teller, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Greg Newsome. Let's kind of unpack these guys bit by bit here. Elijah Moore was benched in the first quarter against the Bengals for violating some team rule, and that might be enough for the Browns to go, well, he's on the last year of his contract, so we may as well try and get something for him right now because we don't really think the season's going anywhere clearly, and we don't even think he's going to be a long-term asset of ours given we're having some disciplinary issues with him at the moment. So, Elijah Moore. Then there's David Njoku. David Njoku of that bunch is probably the closest to the off-the-table group compared to like Elijah Moore. They're kind of on different ends of the spectrum for that right on the fringe category. For me, Njoku, I would be very, very hesitant to deal unless you get an offer you simply can't refuse. If a really competitive team loses their tight end the day before, 2 days before the NFL trade deadline, and overcompensates for the chief, I mean, like they give an offer that you can't say no to, then that's probably one that I would accept, but only in that situation. I'm not looking to trade Njoku just for the sake of trading Njoku. You have to give me an offer I can't refuse. Then the 2 offensive linemen, Jack Conklin and Wyatt Teller. And maybe even Joel Petonio, but I really don't want to see Petonio get dealt, but maybe you could include him as well here. But Conklin and Teller, you got 2 veteran linemen, both around the age of 30 years old, both have big cap hits in 2025. You're probably not going to get much for them because any team acquiring them would be doing the Browns somewhat a favor in terms of taking on the rest of their contract beyond this season. But if a team loses a starting offensive lineman, I know the Texans' O-line is really bad. Maybe the Bears want to give Caleb Williams some more support, or the Commanders with Jaden Daniels. I'd be open to trading either one of those tackles. The thing with Conklin is, if you move on from him, you're ready for DeJuan Jones because that wasn't a very good experience for the first couple of weeks of the season. And then 2 defenders on the fringe, Dalvin Tomlinson and Greg Newsome. Browns gave Dalvin Tomlinson a pretty rich contract. It was the biggest contract Andrew Berry has given out in NFL free agency as the Browns GM. I think there are a lot of other pieces the Browns are willing to move. I think they want to keep the middle of that defensive line in place. And then finally, Greg Newsome. I think Greg Newsome of that on the fringe group may have the best chance of getting dealt. I mean, on one hand, he plays a very valuable position, corner. Teams are always looking to acquire cornerbacks if they are banged up at that spot at the trade deadline. He's got that first-round pedigree, so he has some name notoriety to himself, but he hasn't been a very good corner this year. The Pro Football Focus rank speaks to that. But on the other side of the coin, Andrew Berry really values corners. We have seen that. He has displayed that with actions by continually investing in that position group, right? They had they had Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, and at the time, Greedy Williams, and they still used their first pick in that draft on Martin Emerson. So unless the Browns get a really good offer for Greg, I think they'd be more inclined to hold on to him. There has been trade rumors in the past surrounding Newsome. The Browns continue to keep Newsome on their team, but maybe at 1-6, that really changes Barry's opinion on him. So I think overall, Newsome is probably in that camp of most likely to go, but also I wouldn't be shocked if he's not traded because Barry really likes corners and he may think Newsome is still a good long-term piece for them. Guys that should probably start packing. Kind of like if your wife's going to labor soon, you have the suitcase, you have the bag ready by the door. These guys should have a to-go bag ready. Za'Darius Smith, Shelby Harris, Maurice Hurst, Quinton Jefferson, and then Rodney McLeod. The first four we'll unpack right now. The four players all on the defensive line. Smith, to me, is the most slam dunk trade I've ever seen. Elijah Moore is probably going to go to a team like the Chiefs and probably help them win the Super Bowl. Za'Darius Smith is going to go to the Lions and probably help them get to the NFC Championship game. And Shelby Harris is probably going to go. Where's Harris is going to go? I'll think about Harris later, but whatever team he's an interior defensive lineman, he's as good as gone. And then Hurst and Jefferson aren't going to get you as much as the first two players right here, but day 3 pick swap, right? 7th for a 6th, that could probably happen. And then there's Rodney McLeod. I mean, watching Sunday Night Football, I saw the Jets lose their 2 starting safeties, and Rodney McLeod has been awesome this year for the Browns. If they get a little bit desperate, since they are really all in on this year, maybe they give the Browns a offer that is well above what Rodney McLeod's value is, and the Browns go, well, we can't say no to that. But you look at the 4 defensive linemen, I think Smith might get the best overall return, possibly, of any Browns player that gets traded following Amari Cooper. When you kind of balance in the likely trades versus the unlikely trades and then the compensation for the likely trades, Za'Darius Smith, you are a Detroit Lion. I don't know how else to say it more clear than that. There is no doubt in my mind Za'Darius Smith is going to get traded, and I think it's going to be to Detroit, especially after Hassan Reddick agreed to a new deal with the Jets. That means the Lions can't get Reddick, and they can't get Reddick, and Smith is the next best option. Then you got Rodney McLeod. For any team looking to add a safety right at the trade deadline, that's not usually a position you stock up on, whereas like defensive ends, defensive linemen, maybe you want some extra depth there for a postseason push because the fatties can get a little bit tired as the season goes along. 17 games is a lot of wear and tear on their bodies. But if a team loses a starting safety or 2, Rodney McLeod seems like an obvious candidate to pick up the phone and call and inquire about because he's been really good for the Browns so far. And the Browns have Grant Delpit locked up long-term. Juan Thornhill has 1 more year on his contract. And then there's Ronnie Hickman, DeAnthony Bell, 2 young players the Browns like a lot. So unfortunately for McLeod, it just makes a lot of sense for the Browns to get something for a veteran player who is back on a 1-year contract and said he would only play for the Browns, a.k.a. Jim Schwartz. But maybe if a competitive team calls, a real contender makes an offer, McLeod would say, yeah, this is probably a good move for both sides. Let's make it happen. The final thing I just want to remind you guys of is when we talk about trades, what is the magic number? Base salary. We do not care about cap hits. Say it with me. We do not care about cap hits. We care about the base salary. And what you are calculating is their base salary divided by 18, the number of weeks in the season, and however many weeks are left when the trade is made, that is how many pay stubs the new team is acquiring. So all these guys have very low base salaries. Like I'm talking as low as it gets, vet minimum base salaries. They still have more money, but their money is coming in other ways, like signing bonuses and bonuses like workout bonuses, stuff like that. You know what I mean? So all these players are super duper cheap to acquire for any team. They don't need much cap space whatsoever. So it makes them really easy to trade. And the Browns aren't going to take worse draft capital back by eating more money. For example, the Davante Adams trade. The Raiders are eating the entire bill of that Davante Adams remaining contract. If they had maybe moved some money around and the Jets, it could change the trade compensation. So before we get on out of here, make sure to turn on your notifications for any potential trades. They're coming. I don't know how to say it. At 1-6, Cooper's gone. Watson's down. Guys should start packing their bags a little bit, especially the 30-plus-year-olds. So do not miss a single trade for the Browns when you're not only subscribed, but you click that notification bell, select it to all. When a trade happens, we'll be the first one to let you know on YouTube.